Are you getting to that place where it feels kind of like there's too much going on in your business? You feel like you're starting to drown in all of the tasks and you're wondering, should I hire somebody? Is it too early? Did I wait too long? So in today's episode, I am going to be helping you really answer that question. When is the right time to hire somebody else in my coaching business? Welcome, coaches, to this week's episode of the Best Damn Coach podcast. I'm so pumped you're here because we're talking about hiring, expanding your team. And if you're like me, back when I was starting out, I never even fathomed that I would be having this conversation with you on the flip side. I never dreamed that I would have people working for me and with me, both as employees and contractors. And so you might hear this and go, I don't know if this is for me, but I want to invite you to listen to this conversation as your future self and really ask yourself, like, where do you want to be in that future? Could it be that at some point to get there that you're going to not be able to do this alone, nor do you want to? And so one of the common questions I get is, how do I know when to hire? When should I bring somebody on? And that's really what I'm excited to talk about today and give some of my pieces of feedback based on my experience. And I think you could potentially listen to 10 different coaches that have built businesses of similar size, and we might all have something different to say. This is just my opinion, but I think there's definitely some things in here that we would all agree upon. And so I first want to talk about my mistakes in hiring, just so you know you're not alone. And part of knowing who to hire is actually making some of those mistakes so you know what you want. So just knowing that is part of the process. Some of the mishires I made showed me exactly what I want. And we've currently been hiring. We've expanded to about a team of 6 now. And that is, I've learned so much, and I'm a way better hire and way better at boundary setting and expectations and reading people than I ever was because of the process. So I just want to tell you, you're probably not going to do it perfect out the gate, and that is perfectly acceptable. And my best friend runs a multi 8-figure company. They have hundreds of employees, and we talk about hiring as well. It's one of those things that you just get better at over time. It's definitely a skill. And so when I was in a place about that I knew I was kind of in need of support, I feel personally that I waited too long. If we're looking at a money marker, it was when I was crossing for the first time that 6-figure mark, and I was still doing everything on my own. I was burnt out, overwhelmed, exhausted. And what I also had was a thought that, like, nobody else can do it but me. I do it my way. And I really didn't see how I could possibly teach and bring other people in. And so that was a limiting belief I had that I absolutely no longer have, probably to the fault of, like, who can I bring in and how can I do only the things that I want to do? And so I think that was one of the greatest mistakes, is I waited too long to hire, which I'm going to talk a little bit more on later in the episode. The second thing is, because I waited too long, I was frantic and overwhelmed. I don't think I had a clear understanding of what I really needed. Nobody taught me a system. I just kind of reached out to people like, do you have a VA? I've heard of this thing called VA, and it sounds like it's really fantastic. And so I brought somebody on because she's just like, my head was underwater, and she rescued me for the time being. And I just randomly gave her stuff to do with no clear direction, and I wasn't organized. And because of that, actually the output that she gave me was wah-wah. I don't think it was entirely her fault. It was also, I have to take the extreme ownership for it, because I needed to be more clear in my direction and expectations and systems and organization. And so none of that existed initially. And so today I want to save you that headache, because where I want to start the conversation is actually things that I think you should have in place before you consider hiring. And then let's have the hiring conversation. So the first thing I believe you should have in place is some sort of organizational structure in your business. So in other words, where can I go find things in a systematic way? In my business, we use Google Drive, Google Suite for everything. And so our team members have access either to the whole drive or to the parts of the drive that they need, but everything is inside of folders. And I'll even drop some screenshots in the episode so you can kind of even see how we organize. But there's basically big headings And inside those big headings, so for instance, let me tell you about the podcast folder. So there is a folder called podcast. Inside of it, we divide all of I'm looking at it as I talk right now. We divide all of the important parts of the podcast, the recurring assets, the coaching clinic episodes, the main episodes, any pitch work involved in it. And we have a folder just for our SOPs, which I'll get to in a moment. And then inside the main episode folder, it's subdivided again by month. And inside of that by episode, right? So you want to have some sort of structure so that if you were to bring a team member on, then you're able to communicate to them where they can go to find the things that they need. Now it might be, but that this is already like the sticking point for you. You're like, oh crap, I have no structure. And that's okay. Don't worry. Then what you might need to be specific about is when that person comes on, you're going to have to take time before they even do work for you to be that organizer for you and help get you organized so that there is a system in place. And so that's the one thing that I would absolutely have before you start hiring anybody. A second bonus thing that I didn't have that I wished I would have is some sort of project management tool so that there is really two systems, I guess I would say. There's a project management tool so that you can clearly communicate the workflow. And those might be Asana, Trello. My favorite by far is Monday.com. It tends to be a little higher in price point, but I think you get what you pay for. But everybody on our team has access to these folders. This is actually our main method of communication. Some people like Slack, but this is where we do everything. This would be a bonus, not necessarily a have to. But I do think that I had the system in Drive together. My OBM over time has made it way better for us. But in general, the PM tool, a PM tool that I think is really valuable, is a second tool that I think is extremely valuable. So once you have those tools in place, or at least a fraction of those tools, now you can start thinking about who is the right person to bring on and when. Like I mentioned before, my mistake was I was exhausted and overwhelmed and sinking, and my quality of life was kind of suffering because of it. I think I waited too long. So if you're already having that nudge of, it would be really nice to have somebody, I actually think you're getting the exact sign you need. And one of the reasons we're afraid to do it is because of the outgoing expense. You're like, but I'm not bringing enough revenue to justify the salary. You don't have to do that. There are amazing VAs out there that can work 2 to 5 hours in your business, and you would be shocked to see the pressure that is relieved from 2 to 5 hours of business, of working in your business. And then when you find the right person, it's a great way to test the waters, is starting with those 2 to 5 hours. You're going to see, do they jive with me? Do we sync? And then that could potentially give them the opportunity to grow with you over time. And there's amazing VAs who work for multiple people who do that. And they know that over time, it could potentially grow as long as they're, creating some sort of ROI. So if you're looking for a definitive marker on how long should you have been doing this, how many clients should I have, at what dollar mark, I don't think there is one. Everybody is different because you can handle, like, your plate looks different from person to person. And so I would say if you're asking yourself the question, is this a good time? It's probably a sign that it's a time to begin to explore what that could potentially look like in your business. And so the question of who is that person? I really think it could look one of two ways. For most people, I think that great first hire is a VA that can take tasks off your hand that you don't either want to do or are easily repeatable, that you don't have to have a hand in. And I'll talk about how you can organize this in just a second. That person, you're probably going to invest maybe $15 to $25 an hour for. So let's say at the most, you pay them $50 a week for 2 hours of work or less. And I'll drop a few resources in the show notes of people and agencies that you can look to find VAs, or even groups that you can be a part of to ask around. But a great way is to just ask your network, ask the people around you, because there's probably people in the online space that can give you some great suggestions. Because sometimes when you go through an agency, you will have to pay a finder's fee, or they will even take a little piece of their revenue. And that's one thing I want you to look out for is some agencies, every time you pay your VA, they take a little bit. I learned the hard way. That wasn't a situation I got myself into, and that sucked because I wanted to give my VA a raise, but then the agency got more money and she was the one doing the work. I did not like that. So anytime you can pay kind of that flat rate fee in the beginning, I think it's better because you never know where that's going to go, or ask around within your network so you don't have to pay that fee altogether. But I've definitely done them both ways. The other way you could go would be to hire a project management, or who I have working for me is an online business manager who handles basically the back end of the entire business. And these two people, though, you're going to pay a higher hourly rate to. And sometimes you might have that cash flow. So it's an amazing place to start. Had I really known this, I probably would have wished I started there and maybe started with her on a more part-time basis, just because she's come in and she's been such a powerhouse inside the company as far as organizing and metrics and seeing workflows. I am not a detailed person. I am a visionary. I am high level, and she complements me. We have very different strengths and weaknesses. And so because of that, she's been working for me for 4 years now. And it's been an awesome hire. So if you aren't sure where to start, or you want to start small, totally a VA would be awesome, with the idea in mind that maybe bringing on somebody that does kind of that larger role, can take larger role off your plate, is a great next step to take. And that's just my suggestion. Again, other people might say other things, but that's been my experience overall. And how do we know the what that they're going to do? So if you're listening and maybe this seems really out of reach still, and you can't even think about hiring, no big deal. Table this episode, come back to it at a later date. You're still going to learn so much by listening here, but maybe you're not ready to hire. That's okay. If you're thinking about it, there's a nudge, then here's what I want you to start doing. I want you to just open up a Google Doc, and I want you to start keeping a list of things that you feel like somebody else could do in your business. And you might be like, well, nobody can do it. I've got to do everything. If you were like me, that might be in your brain. Here's how I want you to think of it. What are the things that only you want to do in your life that nobody else could do but you? So for me in my life, that's parent, that's be a wife, or coach my clients, record my podcasts. Those are things I'm never going to off level in my life, because these are the things I want to do. I find joy in, they light me up, and also nobody can repeat. But what can other people do? Well, they can do the editing of my show. They can write the show notes from the content that I create. I can write my newsletters, but they can schedule them and format them and edit them. They can schedule all the email correspondence. They can do the automations. I can write the content, but they can create visuals. So there's so many parts of things that we do that 100% somebody else can do. And here's how, so create that list. That's where I would start. So begin to formulate that list, because that's going to be where you start with your person that you bring on. And then when you have that list, you'll start to see that maybe similar groupings or like tasks combined. So if you host a podcast, it could be that you hire somebody to help you with the podcast and you focus on just the podcasting pieces. It could be that you hire someone to help with all of your email marketing campaigns and scheduling those things. Those are very time consuming. And so that's the project that you onboard them in. And so what I like to do is when I bring somebody on, we kind of let them have control of a little piece, and we watch and we ask questions and we teach that little piece. And that's really the test of like, is this going to work? Is this going to work out for us? Does it work out for them? And then we can slowly give them access to larger projects over time. And so when you have that list, at least it gives you that starting point to begin to have the conversations with somebody around and slowly create, an onboarding process. When it comes to that statement, though, of nobody can do it like I do it, then here's the thing that I would encourage. Create SOPs, or standard operating procedures. In other words, teach them how you do it so they can repeat it just like you. And a very simple way to do this is to use Loom. It's a free resource. It basically is a screen recording resource, so where you could just walk them through. So if you were going to teach somebody how to schedule your email, marketing campaign for the week, you would literally just record your screen just as you would do the entire thing. You would show them how you typed the copy. Maybe it's in Google Doc, where to find find it, how you would bring it into your email marketing system, the things you would look for, making sure how that you want the links done, like every facet of it, you would teach it to them. And so we have this inside of our business. Those are the SOPs I mentioned earlier. And when we have something specific we want done, we create an SOP, and then we create a folder that's filled with all of our SOPs in the business. And so that's what I was saying. Have that system of organization. So as you begin to build these SOPs, then you're already ahead of the game. And so if I were going to hire a VA tomorrow to take my email marketing, I would try to have had some of those SOPs created so that I could teach them, and then they would have a reference point. So when they do it without you, they can go back and watch the video and they have everything done for you. And so this makes it, in this digital world, it's so easy to really have those processes and visuals in place so that you can support them, more simply and be somewhat hands-off as you onboard. And so this is really, the big picture of what I think, when the right time to hire is and when the right time to not hire is, and what should be done before the hiring process. But I also want to mention a few things that, in my opinion, aren't things too off level. I think that anytime you have direct connection with your ideal client, don't off level that. So in other words, I can have somebody post my social media and even write my social media content, but for me, I'm going to be the one that's in the DMs. I can have a support email, but I also want to be the one that's handling some of those emails that are directly client accessible. I want to be the one doing my coaching. I want to be the one actually also writing all of my copy and marketing. And here is something that I failed horribly at is I've hired copywriters, and they've been amazing, to be honest, but they don't quite write in my voice and my tone. And I think that those are things that I personally would never have somebody else do. So when you read my newsletters every week, 1,000,000% I've written every single one of those, because that's something I find joy in. I imagine I'm sitting down and I'm having a conversation with you. I write all of my podcast copy and content because I imagine I'm sitting down and having a conversation with you. So you have to find that sweet spot of like letting go of control and not micromanaging. And you're going to find what that looks like for you in your business, of the things that you want to do only. I mean, I even found this when I thought that I really wanted to expand my business by bringing on assistant coaches who were marvelous. And then when I got through that, I realized actually I don't want that as a business model. I've got to find a different way that allows me to be the sole coach, not out of ego, but out of love for my people. And because they've built kind of an intimate connection with me, and I want to keep that going. And so as you go through this hiring process, just know that you're going to figure out that as you evolve. And sometimes you're going to have people, I've had hard conversations of people that have worked for me for years. And I realized that I was shifting and my needs looked different in business. And I had to make hard decisions and have hard conversations about moving on to new people. And that is also part of the process of hiring team members, is also you have to be willing and able to let go of team members. And one of my mentors really gave me this piece of advice that I thought was awesome. It's hire slow, fire fast. And while that seems kind of brutal, it's been really great. It's like, listen to your intuition, but be slow. Look at lots of candidates, ask lots of questions, vet them out. And then when you realize it's not working, don't try to keep trying to reteach and reteach. Just like acknowledge that it's not working. There's not good synergy there, and be willing to try something new. That's why I encourage onboarding a person in a small project and let them go in and move into larger projects. Sorry, that felt really choppy, but you get what I mean. And the last thing I want to hit on is how you hire and how you pay them and all that important stuff. So this could look different. Now what we do is we create a really intense job description that's really clear on what we're looking for. And we invite those people that are interested to submit an application. And then we go into a video interview. As I mentioned before, I've also hired through agencies. And the cool thing about agencies is you give them that job description and they can actually like pick 3 applicants that they think, or they'll go to their network, post the job description, and then pull together 3 applicants for you. I found that extremely useful when I was hiring my OBM because it was a much higher tier. So it depends on which route, but I would really encourage you to create a really clear job description on what you want them to do. So you're clear, most importantly, then they can make sure they're aligned with it. Then it can be something as simple as hopping in Zoom and testing the waters, asking questions, pulling together interview questions. And I would just encourage you to take the time to sit with lots of people. If they submit an application to you and it feels good, sit with a few people so that you can feel that you're very confident in making the decision. And then as far as payment, that really depends. I don't want to get too detailed here on that depends on your revenue and how your business is set up. But it could be something as simple as through Wise, which is an international payment app, or it could be through, a paycheck software. That part is something I would really just consult, your CPA around, just to make sure you have all your ducks in a row and how you're paying. And depending on what country you're listening for, that's also going to be very, very different. So again, if you're asking your question, should I hire? It's probably a great indication that you're ready to at least dive into one of the suggestions I made, whether it's starting simple and just starting the list of what could I off level, or as starting your, all the way to starting your job description because I am ready to do the work. And so if this episode was helpful for you, please let me know. Take a screenshot, share it, send it to a friend, share it in a community of coaches that you belong to. And if you have any follow-up questions around the hiring process, please send me a DM because again, that is not something I am off leveling. And I would love to chat more with you about the hiring process and how we've grown our team. We've shrunk our team and grown it again. And this is one of the exciting parts of growth is for me, how I know when to hire a next person is gaps start to show up in my business. And that gap, I'm like, oh, we're having to spend a lot of energy here to do this thing. We're ready to bring somebody into that particular part of our business. And so if you have any questions, let me know. Love to chat more. And I hope you have an amazing day. And until next time, keep coaching them up.